How good is this evening? Put your hand up if this is the first event you've come out to in a little while. Wow, about half the room. Really, Adelaide is the only place that you can be doing this. Put your hand up. Woo! And we'll introduce our online audience in a second, but they're all in Sydney and Melbourne, so yeah, don't feel too sorry for them. And put your hand up for me if this is your first ever event in Stone and Chalk and the Startup Hub here at Lot 14. Quite a few. Wow, almost more than half the room. Fantastic. Well, for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet over a couple of drinks after the event, I'm Chris Kirk, the General Manager of Stone and Chalk here in Adelaide, and it's my privilege to run the Startup Hub that you're currently standing in here at Lot 14. Stone and Chalk exists to nurture, connect, and propel entrepreneurs seeking to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. We support over 700 entrepreneurs every day and act as a centre of gravity for startup ecosystems in Sydney, Melbourne, and also here in Adelaide in partnership with the South Australian government. And there's absolutely no better representation of two entrepreneurs really trying to solve the world's biggest and most pressing challenges than Flavia and Lloyd, who you'll hear from and we'll introduce in a little bit. But first, some quick housekeeping. So tonight, and welcome to everyone that's online, tonight is actually part of a festival called Spark Festival, which some of you might not have heard of, but is actually the largest startup festival in Australia. It runs completely virtually. It's completely community-led and grassroots organised. I think there's over 13,000 people that are tuning in to events this week. So if you haven't already, jump on the website, spark.co, check it out. It's something we helped co-found a couple of years ago. It's just taken off. It's been a fantastic initiative. And for everyone that's joining us online, welcome. You'd be well and truly used to Zoom calls by now. So just drop any questions in the Q&A and we'll make sure we moderate them through. And for everyone in the room, tonight will be about 50 minutes. We want to keep it conversational. So please just throw your hand up. We'll send a microphone out to you for questions. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our brilliant moderator, who we are so lucky to have because it means I don't have to pretend to sound semi-intelligent, which is almost impossible in space. So Christian Thaler-Wolski, I had to debate how to actually introduce Christian, and he said, do it however you want, which as a German means like you just can absolutely go wild and introduce him however you want. But for those of you that don't know Christian, he's a new recruit to South Australia. We're incredibly lucky to have him. He's got a wealth of experience in SpaceTech in Europe and also in the venture capital space. He recently has been running a piece of work for South Australia around how do we build a really vibrant SpaceTech ecosystem, and stay tuned for some awesome announcements around that piece shortly. And also he's off the back of completing the ISU program as well. So he is a certified space nerd, legit, with the banner and everything. And without further ado, I will pass to him. Please enjoy tonight, ask questions, grab some drinks. We're going to be around for a while. And yeah, over to you, Matt.
Cool. Very cool. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Chris. Yeah, so this is going to be a really exciting event. We're going to have two bona fide space entrepreneurs here in Adelaide in the room, and thus also broadcasting to the world. May I welcome Flavia Tata Nardini from Fleet Space Technologies. Yes, please step on stage. We'll go. Come on. And Lloyd from Southern Launch, a launch company. So we'll have two mics. There you go. Yep, there's the other one. Yeah, this is really cool. So I'm super excited. I have like 100 questions here. It's like 12 pages. And we're going to start talking about Flavia. Flavia is a proper rocket scientist, worked at the European Space Agency, then at the Dutch or the Netherlands Research Organization, and then came to Australia and started the company called Fleet Space Technologies. I'll hand over to you, introduce yourself and tell us what Fleet does and why you founded Fleet 5 years ago.
So I am a rocket scientist in a sense that I really like space and I like rockets. So I guess that makes me a rocket scientist. Listen, I mean, I came to Australia for personal reasons, so it was not really to found a company. And for a lot of people, I'm not sure that they understand how the environment was when I came. Was 7 years ago. I was I was pregnant, so I was having a baby. So I was a high qualified mom, and it was great. But I really wanted to keep working in space. I knew that South Australia was really the center of a lot of engineering. So I was very positive when I moved here, except that I didn't realize that a lot of engineering was in defense. Australia did not have a space agency at the time, and there were one space startup in the entire country. So it was an interesting situation. And I have to admit, not a lot of people know that the first 2 years that I was here, I tried to do a PhD. I put into a PhD applications for building thrusters, pretty complex. And they came back to us, say it was too complex and they didn't know how to guide me. So that was really interesting. So, and then I had a couple of options to go and work for the university and for a mining company. And that was really not what I wanted to do. Then I was at home and it was so hard with these little kids. I'm like, fuck, I need to do something. And, you know, so it's really hard. I remember the first 1.5 years, I had a little book next to me. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. I've been always in a corporate and, you know, always worked for agency, but I was writing my ideas. So, you know, I could build a propulsion company. I chickened out of that. I should have done it, you know. Now thinking about it.
So you didn't do propulsion,
no.
But instead
there is something very funny that year, and I still have got the book. In the third page, I was analyzing Australia, I was analyzing my ideas, and the third page of the book, I still have it. There is something written there, and that was 6 years ago. And he said, the important things in Australia are communication and mining. I will never do both of them because they suck. And I'm doing comms and mining. Hello. Okay, so it's great. Okay. But at that point in time, I thought, nah, comms is not for me and mining is not for me. I really didn't see. But I really was passionate about space. I wanted just to keep working in space. So I'm not an entrepreneur that just I don't do entrepreneurship. I didn't do the entrepreneurship for the sake of doing it. I really wanted to work in space. I think space is the reason why I'm in this world. Don't ask me why. I wanted to do space since I'm 3 years old. I have always thought that it was my purpose and I'm trying to do it. So Fleet was founded 5 years ago. So by myself and my co-founder, Matt Pearson. We founded a company before that. So we were working a little bit together. And we were trying to find the thing that it was very exciting, okay? And we love these small satellites. So small satellites are as big as a shoebox, really small. They've been invented 20 years ago in university in US, mainly to give access to space to universities or students able to hack something together, launching into space. So it's very exciting. But when I came here, there were companies in US that were using small satellites for commercial purposes. So I thought, this is great. Okay, this is exciting. And why are these small satellites exciting? Because it's kind of changing all the space paradigm. Like you can launch MVP in space. So a minimal valuable product in space. That is something really common in the software economy, not really in the space economy. So in space, you build a big rocket, $1 billion, 10 years, you launch it, you cross fingers, it doesn't explode. It's been like this for 50 years. And sadly, you got a chance to launch one satellite, a launch 2, a launch 3, and they just these incremental steps, okay? It's fascinating.
So you have 2 satellites in space already?
4.
4.
So we launched 4 satellites. So we launched 4 satellites in 2018. The constellation is 140. So, you know, the idea, when you look at a nanosatellites constellation, there are 3 phases. The first one is to secure frequency and license. You need to operate with 150 satellites around the world. So this is your first goal. Then you need to launch enough satellites to feel confident about what you're building, and then you must produce. So Fleet, right. Yeah, we are in that phase, more or less.
And what does the company actually do?
So what do we do?
Satellites?
Christian was making...
You make your own satellites, or do you...
No, Christian was making fun of me. I'm like, I'm going to ask you, what the fuck? Sorry for Fleet does. No one knows. Okay.
You design the satellite.
No, so...
You figure out the communication.
No, not Chris. Like, we've been knowing each other for 2 years. I thought you were a friend. Okay. So what is interesting about space and the way this happened is that the information, the data is for now a space company, the oil. So Fleet actually manage a constellation of satellites. We build the main software stack, and the main payload is called, that is a comms radio to allow customers to have the data going to them from the field to an app, okay? Satellites buses, that is the satellite, are becoming a commodity. That's what is bizarre in this industry. So this is not where you make money.
Right.
It's just literally building a bus.
Tell us about a use case, a specific use case, maybe a recent customer that you won or pilot customer that is working with you on this. What exactly happens?
What happened in this comms?
How does the data flow?
So this is called Internet of Things. So Internet of Things is the connectivity of devices. Devices, it's a big revolution and it's hitting very much industries. So I'm going to give you some example of our customers that we have been working on this year, okay? I think that will help you to put context in it. Most of our customers have got assets in metro and remote areas. Remote areas assets are not connected. Not connected. There's no connectivity, there's nothing. There's not GSM, there's not 3G, 4G, nothing, okay?
There are no cell phone towers.
Nothing, okay? Because, you know, I'm going to, you know, if you know that what the customers are, you will understand. So what people do, put people in car, what these companies do, people in car to do and go maintenance and checks. So for example, I'm talking about electric and transmission distribution networks, like the SE Power network and the Electronet of the world. These are companies that have got something like, I don't know, I think SE Power network has got 750,000 poles. Energy of Queens has got 1.4 million of poles. So every time there is a fault and you are with a power, they don't know why. It's normal. So they wait for someone to call them and say there is a fault there. So this is why it always takes two hours for you to go back to power. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Okay. So it's a problem of big assets in remote areas. And like the technology never got to a point in which the sensors are low cost, the connectivity is low cost, there are an infrastructure of data, so you can put sensors on every pole. So we work with SE Power Network, for example. Now we've just closed a customer that is super interesting for us, that is Seagas. That is the gas pipelines between Melbourne and Adelaide. This is not the biggest gas pipelines in Australia, it's actually the smallest. But their problem is easement monitoring. So they have people that go up and down to check if someone digs in the pipe. You know, just last month in US, I think 8 people died because someone digged and it was an enormous environmental catastrophe, okay? So now what we do is we work with sensors company, we create a solution for so the sensors are on the ground, they monitor the pipeline with machine learning, okay? Oh, there is a digger. Alert, oh, there is a cow, who cares, okay? So you see how many technologies are coming together, low-cost sensors, machine learning. We gather data on an aggregator that is called the portal. We send data through satellites. The data goes into the cloud in a IoT platform and to the customers in an app. So now Seagas from their control center, if there is a digger in the middle of something, they know straight away. And before, what they were used to do is literally have people going up and down the pipe every day.
Right. So we're talking about real-time communication, low-powered devices, long range.
Long range and a lot of machine learning to analyze data. So yeah.
Tell us some company milestones recently. So you won that recent customer funding. You've raised venture capital funding.
We have,
one of the earliest space companies in Australia to raise venture capital funding.
There are not many. So if you look at Australia, there are us and our friend Mariota Gilmore and other small companies that managed to raise through the journey. And you guys, you can count them on one hand. So there is a bit of a stall in the industry. I think they are looking at us to see if we succeed, okay? We were really, really good, all of us, to get really some good money. We raised with Blackbird and Mike Cannon Brooks. Most of our customers are really in the energy sector. Therefore, Mike Cannon Brooks is really, really an important topic. He wants to help the world to be more efficient. So we raised with them, and then we raised with Momenta Ventures, is the biggest venture fund in US, and Horizon Venture is another beautiful, gigantic fund that just want to make sure that the world is a better place. So that for us was important last year, allowed us to launch to prepare the 3 satellites that we're going to launch soon. And that.
When are you launching?
the first 2 quarters of next year.
Okay.
And the idea of these 3 satellites is hopefully they behave as we want. We are extending the lifetime of the satellites, and we have changed. There are a couple of people in this room that have built the most amazing payload on Earth. I can put my life on the fact that we got the most powerful nanosatellites on Earth. And I just have to thank a couple of faces that are smiling on the back, okay?
Very good. Excellent. So let's talk about Lloyd. You've got a mic? Great. So Lloyd, you are a space engineer as well.
Correct.
You started at Defense. You spent about a decade working at Defense in rocket simulations, modeling, analysis, and these kind of things. And then one day you woke up and said, I want to be running a rocket launch site. Or how did that happen? Tell us the origin story of Southern Launch.
I'll take you one step back, which was, you know, I came to Australia as a family joke. I somehow got accepted to do space engineering at the University of Sydney. And the whole, just invitation only course. And let's just say that I wasn't the best. Yeah. But anyway, I have no idea.
It's the entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Someone made a mistake. Anyway, but the whole thing back then in the early 2000s was Optus was trying to figure out where they were going to build their next generation of satellites. You know, Cal Poly had just come out with CubeSats, and there was this whole, wow, we're going to build a space industry in Australia. It's all about big satellites. Asia, the Christmas Island was going ahead. You know, there's so much enthusiasm about big rockets. And I finished university and there was nothing, right? Nothing to do with space.
How did that bubble pop?
Optus went overseas. The Soyuz and the likes that were going to be launched, or it wasn't Soyuz, rather, the rockets that were going to be launched out of Christmas Island never came to fruition, blah, 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 blah. It was all big rockets, big satellites. They needed a lot of money to just get off the ground, literally and figuratively. And so I went and worked for Defense. And Defense launches rockets. Had an absolute ball there learning about how all of these major operations worked. And I kid you not, it was around a conversation over beers, as most stories start, and with a rocket manufacturer. And they were talking about, small satellites have got to a point now where you can actually do something useful with them. And so this was about 2015-ish. And they said, we're actually building a dedicated micro launcher to get rockets from the Earth into space because there's a huge backlog.
So just to translate, a micro launcher is a rocket that is smaller than the usual big rockets that you see, whether, the ones carrying the space shuttle.
So a small rocket is Vega. Now, Vega only carries 1.5 tons to space. That's small, right?
And that is how tall? Just for context? 20 meters?
No, I think it's about 30 something or other.
30. Okay. But some of these smaller rockets go down to like 8 meters tall.
Well, that's the whole thing. This is what was starting to happen. People said you don't need a 133-ton vehicle to make it economical to get into space. They use machine learning, 3D printing, blah, 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 blah. And you can now make rockets that are far smaller. So, about 10 meters, and you can get 50 kilograms into space. And so that's what this company said to me, that they were like, well, we're building a rocket, but we have nowhere to launch it from. And I said, but, just jokingly, well, you should launch off Adelaide because there's sweet fuck all, right? Well, south of Adelaide, right?
You can't kill anyone because there's no one.
No, it's 3,500 kilometers until you get to Antarctica, right? Nothing. And so with that, one of the people around the table almost spat out his beer and said, you do that and we will be there. Oh, no, you've got to be joking. And then you started to look into the viability of it. What is the market doing? What's the market saying? And validated it by going out to different rocket companies out there and asking, what's your biggest problem out there? And all of them said, getting off the ground. And so that's exactly what Southern Launch does. Our goal is to get rockets off the ground and into space.
So, but you don't build rockets, right? Just to be clear.
We don't build anything.
At this point in time, I will say no, we don't build rockets.
Okay, all right.
I've always got
others
aspirations.
build the rockets.
Yeah.
And just for context, there are about 100 serious projects around the world building these micro launchers or smaller rockets for small satellites. And they would be launching from the Southern Launch site.
Yeah, or, you know, our business model is a bit more loose than that. You know, you can operate on sites that we operate, or we operate sites for other people, or blah, 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 blah.
Okay. So you had a launch recently. There was something in the news. Obviously, it was not an orbital launch, as in into space. It was what is called a suborbital launch.
Correct.
Can you walk us through that? And what was the purpose of that?
Well, Australia has never had a civilian launch before, right? We've got a brand new space agency, and a lot of people, when they think about space, they think about a 133-ton Vega as a small rocket, right? Or space shuttle. So what we decided to do right from the get-go was start small and very quickly learn and go bigger. And so what we did is we sourced 2 rockets to of exactly the same kind. The goal was to always launch the first one below 100 kilometers using the existing CASA, so Civil Aviation Safety Authority rules and regulations. They've been tried and tested by rockets previously. And then elevate the launch rail, so just aim it a little bit higher, and lo and behold, it gets above 100 kilometers. You know, very safe, very easy, very simple. The first attempt to start the rocket didn't go, and Scott's brought part of one of the rockets.
We'll look at that in a second.
In a moment.
Yep. All right. Cool.
Talk about small rockets, right?
Yeah.
But you can test part of your satellite in it. And that's what the goal of these launches were, to test part of a satellite.
That's what it does. So most of these, what is called suborbital launches that go to just under what is the limit to space, the 100 kilometers magic number that Lloyd just mentioned. They test satellite equipment, they test payload, they test this and that. It could be scientific tests. In this particular instance, it was a payload by an electronics company that was tested.
Correct. Electronic warfare. So looking at stuff for, you know, defense.
Like jamming or whatever.
Maybe. I'm sure if you get it right, they'll come and sort out the mistake, but go on.
We'll have a chart right now that shows us the parabola of what happened. Maybe, Lloyd, you could just walk us through there real quick and also tell us about that red part here and then basically what happened. Just quick though.
So what this is it's called a boosted dart. In Australian terms, it's there you go. It's like the woomera.
Orange one there.
Yep.
There.
And what you're looking at where your right hand is the back, that portion. And then sitting behind that is about a 2-meter black booster that's filled with about 20 kilograms of whoosh, not bang, whoosh is what propels a rocket. And so that black bit burns all of its propellant and gets that orange bit to 1.5 kilometers per second. And it does that in 6 seconds, right? So the energy, or the you know, if you've got some car people in here, that black booster produces 75,000 horsepower, right? Getting 6 kilograms up to that speed.
So hence that powered part, which is the first just 5 kilometers.
Yep.
It's powered with the booster.
Yep.
And then the booster releases this thing called the mini dart that just keeps going another 100 kilometers. You didn't go to 150 or whatever, it just went to short of 100.
Well, we weren't allowed to go above 100, but
Why was that? So actually, we have a video for that. We really want to watch the video.
Sure.
And so this is just shy of 2 minutes, a quick video showing us the freshest footage from that day. And also maybe you could just give us some commentary. The first launch didn't work right? So correct. I guess, everyone was pumped up. The premiere came, right? Bunch of high-powered people were there, and then, nothing happened.
Look, there's always a silver lining, right? We made it onto Have You Been Paying Attention? Right? You've always got to have your standards, right? So, So what happened is, to start a rocket motor, you actually use a little rocket motor. And the little rocket motor broke early. It actually snapped in half when we tried to start it. And that meant that it didn't start the bigger rocket motor. And interestingly, the second rocket launch that you'll see in the video in a moment was actually the exact same rocket that we tried to start on that Tuesday, the 15th. So it didn't work. We made it safe, and then we tried again, and lo and behold, it was a beautiful outcome. So,
all right, cool. Can we have the video?
Today's launch. So this is out at Kaniba near Sejuna. It will create not only new jobs, it'll also help us as we work with defense and our other allies. So this is just us playing our small part in helping Australia become more self-sufficient as we move into the future.
I think it's fantastic to see both Southern Launch and Duke, two South Australians, leading the charge today in an Australian first, getting commercial rockets into space. Lots of things have to come together in order to make this sort of thing work. This is a mix of cooperation from industry, from government and the community. It was fantastic to see, and I was really privileged to be here.
20 seconds. Get a company countdown from 10. Firing system is armed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A very bright future, we hope, for not only us, the defence and the space industry in South Australia. This is the very first step that needed to be taken, and we're very excited to be able to take this further and further develop our technologies.
We're over the moon. So excited to have this great outcome. So everything was for something the size of a whiteboard marker.
Yes!
Nice. Breathtaking. 1.5 kilometers per second. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Remember, to get to orbit, you got to be doing about 10 times that speed. So it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, cool. So how's it working with the community in Kaniba out there? Are they excited about this? Tell us more about that.
What's happening beyond just launching rockets has been phenomenal to be a part of. The community is one of the very few Aboriginal communities out there that have their own nationally accredited primary school. All the kids go to primary school there. You can only stay in the community if you have employment. The list goes on and on. They're very, very proud. Anyway, so we've been, ever since we started working with the community back in March 2018, the community have identified the jobs that they want to get involved with now and how they want to be trained up to be a part of rocket launches into the future. So under this launch campaign, we only provided employment for 19 of the community members. That involved them getting trained by South Australian police on how to staff all the roadblocks, help us do recovery efforts, riding in helicopters out into the bush to go and collect bits of boosters and, all that type of great stuff. But the best thing about it, I think, is just how the kids were able to get involved in all of this. And the primary school teachers there out in Kaniba have re-signed their contracts to keep their involvement with the community because of what STEM opportunities are coming forward. So it's just fantastic, It's giving people hope
So this launch is a significant milestone, even though, you know, it's kind of a cute rocket and you look at it and you're like, is that really a rocket? But it is a rocket and it's a significant milestone. How are we going from here? When are we going to see the first real orbital rocket launch from Australia?
You coming to the Space Forum?
Yep. In a couple of weeks?
Yep.
For the non-space people?
Yeah, 5 weeks time. We're hoping to be able to show you something.
All right. Well, super excited about that. Okay. You don't, can we tweet that or? All right, cool. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. You're both entrepreneurs. You're both rocket scientists, which, you know, you meet very few rocket scientists in your life and you meet very few entrepreneurs in your life, and they're both. So this is the Venn diagram here, that area that overlaps is very small. It's really cool, super exciting. So how do you, Lloyd, especially when looking at the, you know, that first misfire, that's what it's called. So how do you just, you know, that self-conviction of getting up every day and finding new solutions, finding new ways, how do you self-motivate, especially in an industry that is such long cycles, right? Long decision cycles, everything takes forever. And hardware, you know, there's very often occasions where it doesn't work. How do you motivate yourself?
I honestly think I'm not that smart. No, in all seriousness, when I started this, I looked at what defense did and thought I can just copy paste and it would be pretty easy. I can tell you it's not. Right? But anything where you're trying to do something new in an environment that hasn't had it before, or you're trying to convince customers' perceptions on a particular product, like farmer, don't drive around your farm like you have over the last decades. Trust in my little piece of technology that I'm sure is what your conversations are, or Mariota and the likes. You know, it's a lot of work, but then when you see people go, oh, you're right, that would work, that's when you really get a great sense of achievement. And you can start to gain a whole bunch of momentum behind you. And yeah, you just keep going along. So
great. Yeah. So we have a room full of people here, about 70 people. They're all enthusiastic about space. That's why they're here today. Is there anything that we can help you with? What could we help you with?
Showing support, like
perception, support.
Yes, the number of people who watched us because of COVID, a lot of people couldn't travel up to Kaniba, and it was also a long way away. But you know, just being able to show support by watching what we do, providing us with encouragement. If you see something, you know, just being involved with us it's what keeps us going. These little letters that we get from school kids, it's fantastic to see the impact
that inspiration
that we're having. Amazing, so yeah. No, thank you.
So thinking about this area here, the innovation precinct, lot 14, we have a building next door. The space agency is there, and a bunch of other space companies. How can we build a vibrant space ecosystem in Adelaide? What does it take to create more companies like yours?
Action. Action leads to motivation, that leads to action. It's a very, very, very simple equation, right? And, you know, while the rocket that we launched was very small, it's but a stepping stone to get forward. And, you know, relying on companies, other companies providing contracts to do services, to put your faith in each other, I think is one of the key steps forward in creating that ecosystem. So, you know, we try and source all that we need, from launch pedestals to, you know, the actual thing that holds the rocket here in South Australia to create that ecosystem. So,
and across Australia, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Don't know. What was the question? Okay, how we can foster this? Listen, I mean, I've got a strong view. I think in Australia, space is led by entrepreneurs, because that's why the space agency was built. Okay, to be a commercial space agency, not a government space agency, not a big prime space agency, but as a commercial space agency. There are not enough space entrepreneurs, and believe it or not, this is what I think. I have seen probably 100 of more startups coming under my nose in the past 5 years since all of us raised. And all of them are actually built by just graduate aerospace engineers. And that doesn't work.
Very technical.
I would have never done it without my co-founder. He's not a space engineer. He's a business person. Fleet is huge. So when I've got this team that calls me, I'm like, I'm trying to build a rocket. We have 7 founders, engineers. It freaks me out. You know, that will never make it. Because to answer a question you said before, remember when I say that space is all about, new space is all about MVPs? This is an MVP, okay? And the software economy has changed with MVPs. So judging this to say, oh, this is too small, is like judging Spotify, okay, when they had the first release and they just connected one song. So we are not judged on how things goes. If their other launch was not going well, who cares? Well, we are judged on some business plans. We are judged on ideas, on business plans, on market values, on how we change the world, on customer happiness, because my theory is when you got money, you can do anything. You hire the best engineers, you build the best stuff. But what investor wants to see is that if I give you this, you got a great idea, can you do this? Now I'm gonna give you this, can you do this? So it's complete, the mentality needs to change. So for changing the ecosystem, we need more entrepreneurs. So a big ecosystem is...
private finance play in this?
Listen, private finance is waiting to invest in entrepreneurs. I've got my investor call me every day and say, what do you think about this business? And most of the comment is, 99% of the time, if I'm calling Blackbird and Mike Cannon Bruce and people calling me, is that really nice technical founders, no idea about the market. So to help these people, probably what we need to do is educate what it means creating a VC. Is very hard to bootstrap a space company. Let me tell you.
Is that something we would actually need to go into the universities and teach students?
No.
What does it mean to become an entrepreneur?
Can you teach to become an entrepreneur?
Not teach, sorry, maybe teach about how venture capital works.
We had a discussion, me and you. So the other day, Christian called me because he's doing this analysis. He said to me, and I was very agitated in that talk. I was like, usually I'm pretty calm, but I was like, bah! And Christian's like, calm down. So my only thought is that actually there is no idea. So space, you can't bootstrap it. Unfortunately, that's the nature of our business. So you need to raise money, either from government or from venture capitalists. VCs are not for everyone. If you need to build a VC company, it's got different rules. There are different rules. Like 90% of the people being a normal company, you can bootstrap it for a while, you can have injection of capital. I'm talking about we'll have to raise 150 millions in my life. I've just raised 20. So the dynamics are different. So you need to learn what it means a global market. You need to know what it means a global vision. You need to know what it means global customers, global business model, scalability, and
What role do role models play in this? Like Lighthouse, like Elon Musk. Do we have an Elon Musk? Do we have an Elaine Musk in Australia? Are you Elaine Musk?
No.
No, but seriously, it's
I mean, like what Elon has done has demonstrated the world that you can create. The man has got vision. The man has got a big vision, and he doesn't care. And his vision was always high. So in his office, there is, since day one, there is a photo of Mars terraformed. So there is Mars with an atmosphere. So the guy 20 had this dream. And now he's putting every piece of the puzzle together to get to this dream. And he raised billions. It's crazy. Okay, so it's fascinating. Of course, he's someone that you look at him and say, how did you do it? And you also look at him because as a founder, you can't raise anymore because they sit in front of you. They're like, what can you do that Elon cannot do? like, I hope Elon doesn't care about IoT.
Let's talk about immigration and skills. You're both immigrants to Australia. You're from Italy. Lloyd is from South Africa. How did you become Australians culturally?
Also, my co-founder is South African, and another co-founder was South African. So I think they drink some good stuff in South Africa, because Elon is South African. Okay.
Hey, there we go.
I had a chat, and then I'll let you answer. They asked me to speak, and I think there was someone here that I met, Olga, that we were at the same event together. Here you are. It was about multiculturalism in Australia and the impact with entrepreneurship. So when I had to give the talk at the Governor House home, I did some study. And I read that 78% of the co-founders of startups, not space startups, startups in Australia are immigrant. And I'm like, this is crazy. Do you remember, Olga, there was a lot of discussion about that day. I'm like, it's a big number, so what does it mean? You know, when you ask me, do we teach things at university? There is one thing that you need to be an entrepreneur, one, that is resilience. And entrepreneurs and immigrants, I mean, we got a lot of problems. We left our house because, and we are totally homesick and all the things that comes with it. But that builds resilience. It builds resilience, and you face risk, and I promise you that resilience is the only thing you need. And also capabilities to learn, learning, and this is the things that blah, blah, blah. But in the past year, I've learned to sell. I've got a sales coach from Silicon Valley. I've learned to sell big time. It's fascinating. And all this year, I'm thinking, like, why no one taught me at school? Like, let me start a company without knowing this? Yeah. How dare they? Okay. And now on all these things, it's fascinating. You need to learn. But this is, to answer your question, I think it's that profound soul resilience in which you are left home, you don't know what's happening. You have nothing to lose, really. You are in Adelaide.
Lloyd.
No,
so how's Adelaide attractive to newcomers?
Yeah, no, I love Adelaide now. At the start, I was like, bloody hell. Yeah. No, so, and the key thing, all that I was going to add is that immigrants, in many cases, are willing to just have a go. Put your heart, soul, and mind into something, and it becomes your life. It all consumes. I mean, how many days a week do you work?
Don't ask me, because I work 4.5. There is someone on my team in the back that said to me the other day, you every month look younger and I look older. And I'm like, that's why I pay you.
Yeah.
So, look.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that, after a couple of rounds of raising and maybe a first proper orbital launch, well, I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks' time, first Kangaroo Island. Yeah.
So Lloyd, South Australia has always had employment challenges, and especially in these testing times, youth unemployment is a big issue. How do we get youth to participate in this new industry that is just now opening up to people even without necessarily a space engineering degree or space science degree? Does everyone in the industry need to have a space degree, or how does that work?
Definitely not. I mean, the majority of the people who work in Southern Launch have never had any form of engineering degrees, let alone a specific space engineering degree. We've hired ex-cops for managing ranges, right? It's all the same things. It's all about skills, transferring the skills into the new role. And as I said earlier, having a go, backing yourself, believing that you can fit that role, and going nuts. I mean, one of the most impressive companies we work with, their senior management were, employed, literally from a bar over a couple of drinks, going, do you believe that you are capable in building this company into, many hundreds of millions of dollars and going forward? And the guy said, yes. He said, all right, come along. This is now your, your trial period. If you screw up, you're out. And with that, the guy, no, I'm in, feet first. So
if everything's so positive, then what are we waiting for? What's holding us back? Where are the rockets? Where are the launches?
I tell you what is holding me back. Okay, so Do you have time? Okay, so okay, you get your beer. Okay, so the big problem in our industry, and surprise, surprise, rockets. Okay, so now we are building satellites, and again, we can launch them and test them and launch them and test them, except there are 3 rockets around the world and they are slow as hell. So there is a bottleneck in the industry. The industry has got a bottleneck that is fascinating. This is why you exist. This is why Gilmour exists. It is a bottleneck. We went to having 12 launches a year. Now there are 50. We need an Uber. We need something that I can book and go to space once a week. That's my dream. I want to see that. You know, to the point every day, like you, I'm like, if they don't do it, I'll do it. I'm going to build that rocket for myself. I'm almost thought I should buy Gilmour. I'm like, if they don't make it happen, I'll buy Gilmour and Solar Launch and all of them, and we just go.
So that's a great cue. We have Rocket Lab in New Zealand launching.
Yeah. So I spoke with them many times. So Rocket Lab built a rocket for small satellites. Peter Beck did really well from New Zealand. He raised millions and millions. Okay, and it's a unicorn now. It's one of the first New Zealand unicorn. It's tricky there. Because in this point in time, he had a dream to use the rocket for a lot of small satellites, but as everything is business now, he's really just working with NASA because they pay more.
And also I think that is Lloyd's thing is we want that capability in Australia, the launch capability. That
will be just easy. Like, I mean, my team knows the story, and even Ian, you know the stories of putting people like interns on a flight from Adelaide to San Francisco just to move a satellite for a day. So they literally reach San Francisco, an intern, 2 interns, twice, go to San Francisco, drive to the place, come back and come to Adelaide. Like what? We can't do that. It's not agile. So there is the problem of bottleneck. There is the problem of vertical integration. It's a complex, very, very complex industry. The more you are vertically integrated, the faster you go. And vertical integration is kind of been lost now. Okay, we outsource the satellites, we outsource the ground station, we outsource the rocket, we outsource. Why Elon is doing it? He's got it all. He's got the rocket launches, he got the sites, he's got the ground stations, he's nailing it. So vertical integrator. At a bottleneck, at a problem, no problem. Just these 2.
All right. Cool. We have a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand in Humanitics. You remember there was a field. Do you have any questions for the panelists? And yes, we have some. We will also, if we have time, hopefully get to some questions in the audience here. Let us know if you have any. One mic will go around. Maybe Chris can do that. Let's start with the first question and do this quick fire, quick answers. Yep. What issues do you face that people may not realize as part of the startup experience? What issues do you have?
Time to market.
Time to market.
Right? Don't stuff around, trying to polish something. MVP, get it out there as soon as you can. That's the key thing.
Right. This is from a recent graduate. What advice would you give to someone looking to land a graduate position in the space industry?
Send us an email.
Send me an email. There we go.
Okay, that would be a good start, Right.
Very good.
I think we hired 4 or 5 graduates of Fleet last month. So, and I put a post on LinkedIn say, I'm looking for graduates, guys, that you've just started. Just personal message me. So we're here, and we want good people. Welcome. If you're not a good engineer, we don't want you.
And I was going to say, differentiate yourself, because, I get a lot of emails from people who are like, I'm an engineer. I like doing engineering. It's really fun doing engineering. And I go, come on, you got to integrate into a team. I'm going to make you work really hard, Be a nice person as well.
Right. How is the experience of satellite operators under the new space regulations? Will there be a preference to launching overseas as opposed to Australia? Not exactly sure what new space regulation the questionnaire refers to.
I think what he's referring to is it's a lot of regulation that are changing. The fact that you build small satellites doesn't mean there are no regulations. That's the problem. So the world is adapting to this. It's not Wild West. It's actually really expensive and really complicated to put things in space. There was a startup in Silicon Valley that launched 4 satellites without authorization last year. They got a $1 million fine, and then they raised $25 million. typical Silicon Valley behavior, okay? That's not good when you launch stuff without authorization, because they can be debris for something else, for a satellite that costs $1 billion. So regulations are changing. Australia is adapting. A lot of people tells the Australian government they are not good on regulations.
Yeah.
We are launched, I know that you guys are trying to cross the line some important stuff eventually, but they want to help. So, you know, they always wanted to help.
So how much help are you getting from the space agency?
I was going to just add
Okay.
to what Flavia is saying, and this is where I get really excited, because you know the space agency has come out and they said that they want to support more than 60 launches per year, right? That is a hang of a lot of launches, and it means that companies like Fleet and others can get into space, and they can get into space every week almost. So that'll really change the market. Yeah. So anyway.
Excellent. Questions from the audience here?
Hey, Lloyd. Ian Cartwright from Marietta. Question about the regulatory environment. Just kind of curious. What would you say it costs your organization to keep the space agency happy, the administrative process behind that? For the satellites, as Flavia was saying, things have got better. There's good movement in the industry. What's the deal with launching a rocket, etc.?
We've never launched rockets in Australia before, so there will always be a period where things are way more expensive and takes a lot longer, as both sides, industry and the regulators, work out what's needed to satisfy safety, security, international obligations, etc. But the goal in the very near term, to try and meet 60 launches per year, is to tailor that all down to a value that's actually really achievable and really cost effective, because Australia has to compete on a global scheme, on global playing field. If we come out and we are $60,000 per kilogram, where in Cape Canaveral or whatever it's 30 or 20 or 10, we're not competitive. So, that's where we have to work towards. And this is where a lot of the new tech in the rockets are really starting to change that cost equation, where the smaller vehicles are far simpler to operate, far cheaper to operate, and it just changes that cost equation.
Great.
I want to tell you an interesting story. When I raised the 5 million for Fleet, at that point in time, there was still a law in the government, in the Satellite Act, that we needed to have 750 million insurance cover, even if we have a satellite that was tiny.
That was worth
so
$1 million.
We literally raised 5 million to launch 4 satellites of $500,000 with a 750 million insurance things on my neck. And my investor told me, listen, if you cannot change the rules, you go, give it a try. And that changed. So I think a lot of startups did that, like Uber, Airbnb. There's a lot of things that change, and you just need to go and try.
G'day guys, Cody Cook. As founders of small aerospace related companies, what's the secret sauce for being able to compete with large multinational aerospace primes, the Boeings and Lockheeds, ULAs, etc.?
Ignore them.
Move faster than they can.
Very good. Thank you.
Incumbents are very slow. Okay, very, very slow. At EDC, so ignore them, is literally ignore them. But there's a funny thing that you learn about startups. Competition is not important. You need to focus on your own game. And eventually they'll buy you out, maybe.
Okay, so we have a question from the online audience, from the Spark Festival. What will the Australian space industry look like in 5 and 10 years' time? So 5 years and then 10 years, 2 predictions.
5, I would like to see about 20 orbital space launches within 5 years, on that 5-year mark. So by that time, we're doing 20 launches. That's my goal. And looks like we'll hopefully be there.
And my goal, I want to see in 5 years 2 unicorns in space in this country. I think they are in this room. And in 10 years, I want to see at least 5. It will be so good.
That was an amazing capstone comment. on vision for the industry in Australia. Thank you very much.